This is Helga Gilbert, and this is a lecture on group processes and group stages. An area of emphasis in this course is learning about the stages and transitions groups typically move through. This is important because a group leader must understand what's normal and anticipated at each stage and how to help individual group members at each stage. Knowing the ins and outs of the stages also helps the leader know what the group members may be ready to do, or likewise, what not to push the members into. Maybe the relationships aren't strong enough for it yet, or there's not the element of trust for it yet. I'm going to draw the information in this presentation largely from Corey, but I'll also use your text and a bit from Jacobs. You can see these in the references at the end of the slideshow. Corey writes on page 103, knowledge of the critical turning points in a group lets you help the participants mobilize their resources so they can successfully meet the tasks facing them at each stage. As the Capuzzi text states, different writers and researchers may use different titles for the stages of group development. However, there's general agreement that there are 4 basic distinct stages that can be identified. This identification is based on the individual's or group's behaviors and perspectives. On this slide, the titles in black, definitive, formative, personal involvement, group involvement, enhancement, and closure, are the stages names used by Capuzzi. In red are the preferred names used in the Corey text. I keep referring to the Corey text. You're not required to buy that, by the way. But I use it as a nice reference. So Corey uses initial stage, transition stage, working stage, and final stage. And again, different authors may use different names. It's important to realize that a group will move from one stage to the next, not in a clear, cut and dry way. It's said that groups ebb and flow from one stage into the next, sometimes stalling out, sometimes regressing back briefly before moving forward. In your readings in Capuzzi, you'll notice that the second half of the book is devoted to chapters on specific types of group work with rehabilitation populations, or the elderly, or individuals who have experienced a death. In reading these, you'll get a much clearer picture of these stages that we're talking about today, because each chapter lets you see how the stages play out with that particular type of group. Like, let's say it's a psychotherapy group versus a task group or an educational group. And also how the stages play out with a different type of population. Let's look closely at each stage. There's a lot of pre-planning that goes into every group. The leader needs to figure out a few things prior to having a group of people sitting in a room together. You need to know what the rationale and the structure for the group is, what the theoretical background you're going to draw on is, who should be in the group, how members will be recruited and screened. You need to know if it'll be a personal growth group, a job club, will it be open, like walk-ins are welcome, like an AA meeting, or will it be a closed group? Will it be just for teens, for college students, for women? When will it meet and for how long? Is this length appropriate in light of the objectives and goals? Can the objectives be obtained by the members in this amount of time? Or can each individual be successful in reaching some of their personal goals in this amount of time, and with this structure and with this theoretical background? As a leader, you will know prior to the first meeting what your procedures and techniques will be for this group. You will ensure that they're appropriate in light of the cultural background and makeup of the group. If you work for an agency, you may be asked to create a proposal for the group you'd like to form. Many authors suggest that you create a proposal whether it's required or not, just so that you have it written and prepared for yourself. You may be asked also to consider the ethical and legal issues that may result from leading certain types of groups. For example, if you're interested in forming a group composed of minors, you might be asked by your boss if you're prepared to deal with confrontations from parents and what all the issues of confidentiality will be. You might also be asked to describe what you would do in case the group proves to be harmful to some members. If you work in an institution, you may not be able to screen your group members. Sometimes counselors are assigned a group to lead. In this situation, it's really helpful to have an orientation for individuals to give them an idea of what goes on in group work. We'll talk more about planning in the next few slides. When considering who to allow in the group or screening potential members, there are some guidelines to follow. If it's a short-term group with a lot of structure from the leader, for instance, for social skill training or stress reduction, you might not need to be as careful in screening individuals as you would for something more long-term like an intensive therapy group, where group members share responsibility for leadership functions as the group progresses. So, assuming you are in the position to screen members, that your members are not a captive audience, but are coming to you because they choose to, here are some questions to consider. Would this person benefit from participation? Is this person motivated to change? Would this person be psychologically damaged by participating? Would this person be a drain on the group? Maybe they're too demanding for attention, or maybe they're unable to share constructively. Ideally, leaders are able to prepare future members with a pre-group meeting, like an orientation for the first day of school. This meeting can demystify what exactly is going to happen in the group meetings to come. It gives individuals a chance to quit or back out if they decide it isn't what they want. The benefit of having this pre-group meeting, and by the way, it can be done individually or with the group, is that you can clarify the purpose of the group, explain the structure and the format of future meetings. You can talk about the ground rules. We'll talk about this a little later on, but things like speaking respectfully, arriving on time, listening to others. Some leaders even hand out written material that outlines this information. You can explain what your own role is going to be, what they can expect of you, and basically what you expect of them. Along with the benefits of group participation, and there are many, like helping individuals meet their goals in a safe and supportive environment, getting support from people going through similar things as them, you also need to explain to the future members what the risks or costs are. And you are all familiar with informed consent. At pre-group meetings, the logistics can also be worked out. Where we'll meet, how long each session is going to last, how many days a week, and for how many months. So let's move on to talking about the initial stage. In the initial stage, the new participants become acquainted with each other. They may act uncertain about how to behave, what to talk about. They'll be a bit uncomfortable at first. The group leader may notice some complaints or grumbling about certain issues, and the term is resistance, and it can come in the form of complaints about the meeting space, the temperature inside, or some other inconsequential matter. Individuals mask their fears about the important issues. And what they're really thinking possibly is, will I be accepted or rejected here? Can I trust the leader? Can I say what I feel, or do I need to choose my words carefully so I don't offend someone? Will I tell too much about myself? Will I be pressured to perform in here, cry and get excited and upset about things? It's typical to have people split into 2 or 4 person groups to discuss these fears and reservations. This is a common icebreaker used all the time in classrooms or other group situations. And it helps to overcome a lot of this initial anxiety. Other things that need to get worked out during the initial stage is, well, people have the tendency to focus on people and situations that are outside the control of the group. These people are not here, and these situations happened in the past. So there's a tendency to focus on the there and then instead of the here and now. Members may do a lot of storytelling. You don't want this necessarily. The group leader's role will be to have the members focus on what's happening in the group at the moment, not what happened with a boyfriend last week or 2 years ago. Focus will be brought around to emotions and thoughts that the group members are having right now in the presence of and maybe because of the other group members. The rationale is that the individual's interpersonal issues will play out in the course of the group. And what they learn from dealing with the people in the group will extend and translate into their daily life. During the initial stage, the group leader is going to talk a lot about confidentiality issues, acceptable behavior between group members, and the goals of the group. Establishing rules and expectations helps everyone feel more comfortable about sharing and being open. A good environment needs to be established for growth to happen. The leader is really setting the stage for cohesion to develop, for trust to develop. It doesn't exist yet, but by laying ground rules, by creating this safe environment, the environment is ripe for these things to grow. Let's look some more at what the leader needs to do in the initial stage. Group leaders want to ensure that a group provides a meaningful experience for all the members. Members have to be active participants in the group. They have to be open to self-exploration, giving each other meaningful feedback, and being honest with themselves and others. They need to learn that the more they share and participate, the more they're going to benefit from the experience. So one of the leader's functions is to help prod individuals toward feeling like they can express themselves and participate in the group. As we discussed, the leader will really teach general guidelines about how communication should proceed and establish the group norms and rules, like being courteous, listening to other people, not interrupting, showing up on time, those sorts of things. The leader is going to encourage members at this stage to really express their fears and their uncomfortableness about being there in the group today, what's happening right now, how you're feeling right now, and also to express what they hope to get from being there, what their expectations are. The leader pays attention to each individual and their personal goals and will work throughout the group process to find ways for them to achieve these goals. Let's talk just a little more about the initial stage because it really does set the foundation for the rest of the process. I'd like us to look at general goals versus specific goals for a moment. There are lots of different groups established for a lot of different reasons. They have a lot of different purposes, but there are underlying similarities across all groups, these general goals. For example, there could be a group organized for individuals adjusting to a disability or individuals struggling with bipolar disorder. The leader of each of these groups will have specific goals and outcomes in mind. So, for example, the specific goals of the group with bipolar disorder will have perhaps goals about learning about their disease, learning about medications, learning coping skills, gaining problem-solving skills. And then the specific goals for the other specialized group of people with a new disability might be to learn to express anger and grief and resentment about their disability, learn to deal with reduced privacy caused by the disability, learn to establish a support system. So these are specific goals, but both these groups will also share general goals, as do all groups. So the general goals of group participation, or the general benefits, we can think of it as benefits of being in a group, are as follows. Increased self-esteem, reduced behavior that prevents intimacy, learning to trust yourself and others, learning how to confront others with care and concern, becoming more open and honest with selected others, learning to support and challenge others, direct communication in the here and now. These are continued on this next slide. Learning to make choices in a world with no guarantees. Increased self-awareness, and in doing so, increasing the possibilities for choice and for action. Recognizing that others struggle too. Learning how to ask others for what one wants. Clarify the values one has and decide whether and how to modify them. These are just some general goals. I could actually go on and on, but I won't, because I'm sure you don't want me to. But you could probably think of some other goals or benefits that come from group participation that do spread across different types of groups. So let's take a break here, and we'll continue with the second half of this lecture and discuss the other stages of group development next.